Have you ever just like been sitting around or watching television on maybe a different place in the world and just kind of thinking like, I wonder what their day-to-day life is? Like, I know what I do every day, but I wonder how their life kind of works over in that particular region of the world. Well, that's what we're going to kind of do today. And it's actually one of my favorite parts about studying history is just daily life and how people lived and what they did and how everything kind of runs. You know, our society kind of runs a certain way. Um, Actually runs a lot of different ways depending on, ethnic groups and things like that, which we'll talk about. Um, but how did people live in West Africa during this time? So we've got the do now, we've got some notes, and then practice. Today is National Dress Up Your Dog Day. And so I know Zena has a couple sweaters, Duncan has a sweater because their hair is really short. So when I take them for walks in the winter so they don't get too super cold. Um, but I'm sorry we didn't go over our aim. It's that you will be able to describe the social structure and family life of West Africans. All right, so this is the do now. It's 5 questions that were from yesterday's lesson at the very end. So go ahead and pause. All right, so number one, the East African kingdom that rose on the Nile River would be Kush. Remember, we're talking about East Africa, not West Africa. Christianity was introduced to Axum, and so that's A, and I know that just from process of elimination. Ghana, West Africa; Mali, West Africa; Songhai, West Africa. An African culture of Muslims living in trading towns was C, Swahili. An important part of the rise of African city-states was trade, and Axum showed its power by creating stelae. That was a tricky one. Some of you probably put churches at first, but churches actually came after the stelae. Stelae came first, so that would make D the correct answer. So here's our notes today. Quickly, you can always pause if I move faster than you're typing. So our first word today is caste, and this is just a person's social class or ranking. Kinship is just a personal connection based on family relationships. So you have a personal connection with each of your family members. You have a personal connection with your family, and that's kinship. It's kind of like, I might not like you today, but I will take up for you, kind of like your, ride or die for your family kind of a thing. Lineage is just your ancestry. So where you're from, who your descendants are. So like my brothers and I both are descendants of my mother, who's a descendant of my nana. So we're descendants of my nana, who's just, and it goes all the way back. And then an ethnic group is just a group that shares a distinct culture, language, and identity. And the first thing that pops into my head when I think of an ethnic group, I think of Judaism and Jews. They have, Hebrew. Um, their culture is very distinct, and they share a common identity. Um, and you'll see this with, there's tons of ethnic groups out there, so. All right, so this is how this kind of relationship in families works in West Africa. It's very complex. So essentially you have this village, okay? Now within that village, you have different clans. A clan, you're gonna have your common ancestor, lineage, 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 lineage. So these people are all descendants of this common ancestor. So like, for example, you might have this person and then he has, say, maybe 4 kids. Lineage and their kids. Lineage, lineage, lineage. Okay? And then this is just the caste system of West Africa. So you have the emperor at the top, underneath that the nobles, the traders, the skilled workers, and then the enslaved people at the very bottom. So we are going to read really quick and then we'll answer these slides. Little is known about how a person spent time in past civilizations. Throughout West African empires, most positions of leadership were reserved for men. Men also took part in warfare and Islamic learning. In later African societies, women farmed and took care of the family. Early West African society was organized by a ranking of social classes. In West Africa, a person's social class or caste determined that individual's place in the social structure. A person's caste was established by the family he or she was born into. The emperor ruled each empire. He had the most power and the highest status, or social rank. All who appeared before him had to bow. In Mansa Musa's kingdom, some had to sprinkle dust on themselves to acknowledge his superiority. The nobility and kings were the next highest caste. Nobles helped the emperor govern the various parts of the empire and lead its armies. Below the noble families were traders and free people of the towns. They ran businesses and farms. So before we go on, how do you think today's West African society compares to traditional West Africa? And then just what is a caste? Go ahead and pause. All right. So one thing that I think about West African society compares to today's West African society and traditional would most likely be that in today's West African society, the social classes are not as divided or strictly enforced. So like in West Africa at the time, if you were born into a certain social ranking, you stayed in that social ranking. You couldn't move up and down. But today, similar to the United States, you have that ability to kind of move around on that social ranking. You're not stuck, which is what's happening here. What is a caste? A caste, you could have even just gone back to your notes for this, or you could have found it's highlighted in here is just a caste. Remember, you got to restate, a caste is a person's social ranking or class. Okay. Then on your own, you're going to read about slavery in West Africa. A lot of people, like, we've seen slavery in every society, but sometimes people are kind of like, there were slaves in Africa? Yeah. And so you're just going to tell me what the impact of the exchange of slaves, gold and salt have on West African and North African societies. And then this is not going to be in the text. This is what I want you to dig into and kind of connect it to our world in the United States. So how was West African slavery different from slavery in early America? So when we had slavery in the United States, you know, slavery was made illegal in 1865. So, yeah. So, oh my God, Zena. Sorry. So, how was slavery during that time period different from West African slavery? Because they are very different. So that's one question I really want you to deep dive into. You have some kinship and ancestry questions here in this text. City and village life. This is a opinion question. And then you will be done. And make sure you go over the turn-in checklist. And then do not forget to fill out the attendance form. Tomorrow we're going to be focusing on society and religion in West Africa. And so I am super excited to see you tomorrow. So you all get your work done and have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.